Hey, welcome to day 2 of 7 days to Easter. We're just doing some quick devotions leading up to this weekend when we celebrate Jesus' death and resurrection. And what I want to talk about for just a moment is being washed clean. Washed clean. We talk about being washed clean from sin, and that's because sin is ugly. It's nasty, it's dirty, and it gets all over us. And there's a lot of ways that we can try to better ourselves. We can try to be smarter. We can try to learn things. We can try to obtain things in hopes that that will actually make us what we want to be. But as long as sin exists in our life, we're just never going to live up to that standard. But the good news is that Jesus washes us clean, because sin taints and attempts to separate us from God, but nothing can separate us from Him. Nothing can separate us from His love. His love is way too big. It is way too extravagant. It's the only thing that's going to wash us clean. And without Jesus' cleansing power, we are doomed by sin. And that's strong language. That sounds harsh. But that just goes to show how big a deal sin is. You know, in John chapter 13, Jesus is taking the Passover meal with his disciples. And John takes a slightly different approach here. He points out some things that we don't necessarily see in the other Gospels. And one of the things that is significant is when Jesus does the unthinkable. He washes the disciples' feet. Now, I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, that sounds awful. That sounds gross. That doesn't seem sanitary. In a COVID era, that's a no-no. But this was something that was common practice. You would wash your feet. You'd wash your hands because you did this before meals and things like that because, well, you didn't have shoes necessarily, and this was a different time. And so you would prepare yourself basically for a meal by doing this. And Jesus takes on that role. The thing that's significant about that, though, is that this was the lowest thing you could do. Foot washing was just about as low as you could go, not in necessarily a bad way. But you just didn't see rabbis and religious leaders, significant people doing this for people who, from a cultural standpoint, were seen as below them. And yet Jesus does that with his disciples. It's a profound moment. And he's washing their feet. And he's teaching them in the midst of this. And he says this in John chapter 13. This is after he'd washed their feet. And he'd taken the towel and he dried it off and all of those things. He says, "Do you understand what I have done to you? You call me teacher and Lord, and you are right, for so I am. If I then, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also ought to wash one another's feet. For I've given you an example, that you also should do just as I have done to you. Truly, truly, I say to you, a servant is not greater than his master, nor is a messenger greater than the one who sent them." You know, after Jesus washes the disciples' feet, he does something very practical. He challenges them to go out and serve others. And while you and I may not literally go and wash people's feet, that'd be kind of weird if you were to go to your friends and say, "Hey, come on over, let's get together," and then they show up and you've got a big basin of water and you're like, "Hey, so good you could be with us tonight. Let me just wash your feet first." Like that's maybe not the best approach, but think about ways you can serve others today. Think about ways you can serve others tomorrow and throughout this week. I believe that we can serve others in ways that mirrors God's heart, that basically nobody is above or below anybody. We're all the same. And we all need Jesus. And he has set a beautiful example of servanthood for all of us. Jesus cleanses us of our sins. He washes us clean. He did it literally here. He washes the disciples' feet. And he asks us to join him in serving others as well. Jesus is ultimately the definition of humility. And so whether it's your friends or your family, how will you show humility to those around you today, tomorrow, the rest of this week, and man, hopefully the rest of your life? I hope this has been a blessing to you. I hope this has just kind of helped supplement the week as we get closer to Easter. Have a great rest of your day, and we will see you for tomorrow's devotional.